Great morning.
All right, I call the meeting to order and please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Present.
Councilman Miller.
Here.
Councilman Woods, I think called and said she will be about 10 minutes late. Eric Crouch, what up the fuck? Councilman Ham. Here. Councilor Ward. Yeah, Councilor Pointer is here.
There she is. It's right here.
There she is. Is here. Okay, citizens comment, and I have a form for Laura Bellinger.
Yeah, good enough. Did I want to challenge you?
Well, I don't know what I've never heard that name pronounced.
Thank you, no problem. It's okay, I should have kept it. I just wanted to make a comment on attachment A. I don't know if you'll be speaking on the proposed fee schedule or not, but the fees.
Could you use the mic, please? I'm not hearing you.
Hello,
There we go.
Thank
can you
you.
hear me?
Thank you.
Better.
Thank you.
Hold it. Regarding the proposed fee schedule, thank you so much for not increasing the fees again this year. However, and you know why, I don't have to explain, but there's also some discrepancies here. The business fee was raised to 70 for a business license and it says current fee is 60. So you guys can, if you're going to go over that, if you can discuss the discrepancies between the current fees and the fees from last year. Also, other towns nearby work on a sliding scale for their business fees. And business fees, when they're charged, the town does things in return, like does background checks or puts them on the website so that they're advertised. What do you do for the businesses that for a $70 fee? And if you could discuss a sliding scale, some people who have cottage industries still have to pay $70, may not pay because the fee is so high. They have 0 employees, where other people with 10 or 15 employees still pay the same amount. Would you entertain talking about a sliding scale for business fees so that people who have, sorry, I didn't say, so I'm having a breath. So people who have less employees and less income are more inclined to pay the fee versus a large fee such as $70. I think it's North Bend that pays, I think their sliding scale starts at 25. It goes up from there according to how many employees they have or how much income's earned. I can't remember which. I was going to talk about the initial use permit, but I do not see it here. And once again, just thank you for not increasing them this year. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on to our consent agenda. And that has the city council meeting minutes from May 9th, the special council meeting from May 15th, and May 20th. Approve that.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 9th, meeting minutes of May 16th and May 20th.
Second.
And moved by Councilor Miller and seconded by Councilor Wood. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar passes. Now we have a Lakeside disposal rate increase request. Do we have a representative through this?
We're honored with 2 representatives from Lee's disposal service here this evening.
Well, I'm Greg, I'm the site manager, that's good. And Luke Pike, in the district. So some of this, some of the couple of parts to our being here in front of you guys today was introduce ourselves. I know, I guess, for you guys are fairly new as well. Bill Richardson was our site manager, worked for us for 42 years and just recently retired. So this is Craig and I's first time getting in front of you guys. Wanted to take some time to introduce ourselves. The other part of this is that we typically in July annually, if there's a CPI increase that if we look at the rates and request up to a CPI increase this year, we're asking for a 75% of that CPI, so not the full CPI. It should be in your packets that it's going to be a 3.71% increase that we're going to request, which results in about 89 cents for someone that has like a 35-gallon cart. In the packets has the rates from last year, this year, if you have any questions. We're basically here to answer any questions that you may have. Also, Rick and I were talking earlier in the week that in your packets, there's some recycle information. It's coming up down the pipeline from the state of Oregon regarding recycling. I don't know if you guys had a chance to review that. Starting in July of 2025, the state of Oregon is starting the process to every municipality in the state of Oregon will have the same recycle program and pick up the same kind of products, same material, and eventually get to the same kind of pickup as well. So everybody will be doing it the same way. So that process starts. There's some information in the packet that to review. There's more to go. It's fairly in the infant stage right now. So we're working through it. I don't know a lot of what's going to happen. They're going to stay on task, but right now they're shooting for July. So basically, we're at your disposal for any questions.
There's an ordinance. Since the original agreement and rate was set by ordinance, it requires that an ordinance to increase the rate. The ordinance that is before you tonight not only proposes the increase per their request based upon our existing agreement of the CPI, the ordinance before you also changes the process in which future rate increases can be done by resolution rather than by ordinance. It is atypical to do an ordinance in order to do a rate increase. We have to do it this time because that's the way our history is. So we are changing history here if you pass this ordinance coming up.
That ordinance is later in the meeting.
It's the next item on the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do that. 2401, ordinance amending chapters 93 of the Lakeside Municipal Code, repealing ordinances 2292 and 2295.
I think we're reading the wrong one there.
One above that. Yeah.
Number
The
7.
next one. Is that which ordinance is it?
2405.
Yeah. Item 7 on the agenda.
Yeah. Well, that's the one I just read. I don't have that.
May I read it?
Yeah.
Ordinance 2405, an ordinance amending ordinance number 135 as amended by ordinance 162B, which was a previous increase, increasing solid waste garbage rates for residential and commercial customers and extending the franchisee term.
Do we have to read the whole ordinance before I make a motion?
Unless there's a counselor that requests it, we do not.
I make a motion to accept ordinance 2405, an ordinance amending ordinance 135 as amended by ordinance 162B, increasing solid waste garbage rates for residential and commercial customers and extending the franchise term.
I second that.
Mr. Chair, in order to do it without reading the full ordinance, I have to read the title twice. Ordinance 24-05, an ordinance amending ordinance 135 as amended by ordinance 162B, increasing solid waste garbage rates for residential and commercial customers and extending the franchisee term. The council may now vote without reading in full unless a counselor requests it to be read full.
Do we have any discussion?
The only thing I have to say is in the title, increasing solid waste, if there's a typo, there's an F in solid.
On the ordinance itself?
Yeah.
In the title.
Okay. Oh, you're right. Thank you.
I also want to just point out to the community and say thanks to the gentleman at last that since I've been working with the local events for 3 years now, they have donated every trash can, every dumpster, every recycle bin at our request for every event. So thank you very much.
All right, anything else?
No.
Okay, all in favor? Got another comment? Okay, sir.
In section 1 of the ordinance, which repeals and replaces section 5 of ordinance 135. The replacement section reads as follows: section 5, franchise term. The term of this franchise is 10 years from that date of that this ordinance becomes effective. And I think the intended language was probably the term of this franchise is 10 years from the date that this ordinance becomes effective.
That's out the,
Scratch out the first bat, replace it with the word be, and then scratch out of.
What section are you on, Counselor?
Section 1 of the ordinance,
Uh-huh.
this is the replacement section 5 for ordinance 135.
So you want to remove the word, I'm sorry, I need it. Could you please repeat what you're changing?
Change the phrase. The term of this franchise is 10 years from that date that this ordinance becomes effective. Should be changed to the term of this franchise is 10 years from the date that this ordinance becomes effective.
We're changing that to the and crossing out of. Thank you.
Section 2 of ordinance 24-05. It names the rates of Horning Brothers Sanitary Service. And I know that's a historical name. Is that still currently accurate?
It is currently accurate on the ordinance that we are amending, and this was a interpretation from our attorney.
Also regarding section 2. Section 2 is revising the rate for garbage services. But it doesn't indicate what pre-existing document or what section of ordinance 135 is being amended.
Again, I need to ask you where you are,
Section 2 of ordinance 24-05,
correct?
sub A and sub B
Right?
are written as amendments to rates. There's no indication within section 2 of where the rates that are being amended currently exist.
That is a fact.
That's a problem or not?
I actually had the city attorney write the ordinance.
Okay.
That's my best defense. Since it had to be an ordinance, I'm used to doing resolution with the increased rates. The concept of doing an ordinance to increase rates, quite honestly, is atypical. And that's why I had our city attorney draft this one.
Shall we move on?
Got more? No.
Section 3 of ordinance 24-05 simply states future rate increases may be approved by council resolution,
That's correct.
which is a nice statement of intent. But you're actually amending an existing ordinance without making any reference to what section's being amended and without including the actual language to be in the revised ordinance. It appears that this is an intent to amend ordinance 135, section 13, which is rates. But that's not explicitly stated here.
Correct.
And then my last problem, which is probably the more significant, is Lakeside has a long and inglorious history of doing repeals to ordinances rather than repeal and replace. And ordinance 135 has apparently been amended at least 4 times previously, and this would be the 5th amendment. So now we have 4 or 5 different versions of the ordinance, and they're not the same, and it's very confusing.
It is the intent to modify a complete ordinance, including all the names of past carriers and updating this completely once we get beyond the rate increase being asked for on July 1st.
Right, and that's all I wanted to do with regard to that, was suggest that in the future, we come back and create some clean version of this so that interested parties can actually read and understand it.
Yes, that's our intent. So as I understand, we're voting on this ordinance with the only modification being done in section 5 regarding changing the word from that to the and removing the word of.
The title.
Yeah, no.
Oh, and the spelling error on my part, because I added the word garbage to this. It did not say solid waste or garbage when I got it from the city attorney. So, it talked about amending this ordinance and that ordinance, but it didn't say anything about garbage or solid waste. I actually put in those 3 words. And misspelled one of them.
Well, with those changes. Is there one way to vote? All in favor? Opposed? Passes. Okay. Now, my agenda is not correct, but the next item, the 2401 ordinance.
Yes.
No, let's do that. 2401 ordinance amending chapter 93 of the Lakeside Municipal Code, repealing ordinances 20-292 and 20-295.
If I may, Mr. Chair. May I speak? This is an ordinance which essentially is at the heart of what you folks are considering your most significant priority. And the reason why you had a special meeting earlier this month, and the reason why you had a special public hearing earlier this month and the reason why we spent time wordsmithing this document after that public hearing. So you've already had the public hearing for this ordinance. You don't need to conduct another one. I would suggest that the council consider it and move forward.
Need a motion?
I make a motion to accept ordinance 24-01, an ordinance amending chapter 93 of the Lakeside Municipal Code, repealing ordinances 20-292 and 20-295.
So we have a motion by Councilor Wood and a second by Mayor Crouch. Any discussion?
I had just a couple very small things that I wanted to make sure. On section 2 in the definition of nuisance, we had some discussion of fees, fitness decency at the special meeting. And my understanding was that most of us there kind of felt that was pushing a limit, and was a little bit surprised to see it there in this draft. I just want to make sure that that's what we all agree to leave that or not.
You're suggesting eliminating line B?
That was the discussion we had at the city council or at the special meeting.
I do recall the conversation. I didn't recall the decision.
That's where I'm at too. I wasn't 100% sure.
I think we were going to kind of narrow that down to a better definition, or we were talking about doing that. I don't know if we have actually made a decision to.
I don't believe we made a decision on that, but we did discuss this.
Mhm.
So I guess the question is back in front of us right now. Do we as a council think B needs to be eliminated or modified before we approve this? If the community is defining it, can we get that definition added in this definition section?
It's a community definition for the community at the time.
Again, this seems ambiguous to me, and if we're gonna put it in the code, it seems like we should have something more than just whatever, whoever thinks at whatever time. I had a couple other small things. On section 6D, mentions admissible evidence, and I apologize for not bringing this up at the special meeting, but I wondered how we're defining admissible. Is that some standard definition with the state, or is that something that's within city definition somewhere? Like how, come that appeals time, what standard are we going to go by to define that admissible evidence?
I'm pretty sure there's a legal definition to what admissible evidence is. I'm like an actual judicial one. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm pretty sure in the court, there's a standard for that.
I say as long as there's like an acceptable state, I guess that would be a state definition somewhere that we would lean on if that question came up. Okay. And then the last one is in section I of the same area is we talked about removing that a tape recording. And then we used tape again in the second part of the sentence. But that's very minimal. But those are my three small concerns.
Anything else?
Yes. When we last discussed the draft of this ordinance, there was a section which said it was going to repeal and replace a numbered section of the existing code 93, and the replacement text didn't have a section number or a title. And in tonight's draft, we have two sections where that's a problem. Section 7 on page 6 repeals and replaces section 93.10 of the Lakeside Municipal Code, but doesn't provide a section number or title for the replacement. And on page 7, section 8, section 93.11 of the Lakeside Municipal Code is being repealed and replaced, and the replacement language has no section number or title. So we could assume that the section numbers are the same as the old section numbers, but I don't know what the appropriate title should be.
So what would you like to see happen?
At minimum, we need to put the section number.
Okay,
We may have to come back and revisit this and add titles, depending on what the attorney says.
If the council agrees to pass it tonight, can that just be a modification that you? Since it's, can you do that?
I would think the council could pass it tonight with direction to staff and legal counsel to add reference to previous sections.
Makes sense, there will be titles there. I'll follow that.
Just to keep it for consistency, I agree.
Even if it's the same number.
I think it's the text of the title that's more in question.
I'm assuming it's the same number, because that's been consistent in the current draft. But the titles aren't always retained from the original code.
Anything else?
We've got one last one. Page 8 describes the monetary penalties. There's an A, B, and a C for first, second, and third and additional offenses. And then that's followed by a short paragraph which reads as follows. The monetary penalty shall begin accruing on the date of service of the notice of failure to comply when there is no appeal. Otherwise, it shall begin accruing on a date determined by the hearings official. And that was the last part, a date determined by the hearings official.
Not to be less than 10 days.
Okay, when council last reviewed this, it was our consensus that when there's an appeal, penalty should begin accruing on the date of the issuance of the determination by the hearings officer. That's what we asked for.
I agree, I have.
So the first line of that paragraph, instead of notice of failure, you would like to see date of hearings officer's determination?
The words at the end of the sentence, a date determined by the hearings official, should be the date of issuance of the determination by the hearings officer.
Got it. We will modify it if you adopt it.
Anything?
I don't have any other changes, but as long as we're legally able to adopt it today, I would really think we should get this done and over with.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? That passes. Okay. We have a public hearing and adoption of ordinance 24-2 and ordinance amending chapter 33 of the Lakeside Municipal Code.
Mr. Speaker, may I speak to this prior to opening the hearing? Um, this one just came from staff more than it came from council. What this ordinance does is align our definitions of lodging with the state's definition of lodging when it comes to the transit lodging tax. We don't currently even have the word Airbnb, I believe, in our code. There are things that are present that we administer on a part of the state adopted transient lodging tax, but our code is somewhat limited as to some of the definitions and some of the places of lodging. And this ordinance changes the city's ordinance as it relates to transient lodging tax definitions and locations. It doesn't change policy, it doesn't change prices, it doesn't change anything else in the way of the program. It's about having our language match the state language for the program of transit lodging tax. That is the purpose of this particular ordinance.
Okay, the motion.
I move that we accept ordinance 2402, amending chapter 33 of Lakeside Municipal Code.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Hand and seconded by Councilor Wood. Any discussion?
We need to have a hearing.
Here, oh, yeah, that's right, we do. We have a public hearing, so does anyone wish to speak to this? Apparently not. We'll close the public hearing and any councilors have any further. You do. Oh,
So as I read through this, it looked to me like what this ordinance was accomplishing was it wasn't making any changes to practices regarding operators of short-term rentals. But it was adding listing agencies, which are referred to in the ordinance as transient lodging intermediaries to the code. So it's adding corporate entities like Airbnb and VRBO and Vacasa. And it's requiring those entities to obtain a local business license, to provide the city with a listing of all properties that are utilizing their registry, and for those companies to submit to the city transient occupancy taxes that they've collected from people who have rented those units. So that's my understanding after reading it. So it's slightly different than just aligning definition. Through the actual language of it. One thing I noticed in the definition section is that there actually isn't a definition of lodging. It appears that what we've used instead of lodging is we've used the term motel, which provides a pretty comprehensive list of every type of facility that could serve as a short-term rental. And defines the transient occupancy as being for 30 days or less. The definition of occupancy, it refers to a hotel rather than a motel. And there's no definition of hotel. We believe that the word there should be motel. Where it says the use or possession or the right to use or possession for lodging or sleeping purposes of any room or room in a hotel. Be consistent with our other definitions, that should be motel. Under the definition of transient, um, the term hotel appears again where it should be motel. It's in the second sentence, which reads, the day a transient checks out of the hotel / RV park, it should be motel / RV park. On page 3, under section 33.03, tax imposed, subsection C currently reads, the transient shall pay the tax to the operator of the motel / RV park at the time the rent is paid. And it should be changed to read, the transient shall pay the tax to the operator or the transient lodging intermediary of the motel / RV park at the time the rent is paid. That would make this section consistent with all the other changes that have been recommended for this code.
What page are you on, sir?
Page 3, section 33.03, sub C.
And the change again?
After the word operator, the words or transient lodging intermediary should be inserted.
Thank you.
Also on page 3, section 33.04, subsection A. The second sentence has 2 instances of the word operator, and each of those should be followed by or transient lodging intermediary.
Thank you.
Suggesting to change the definition of operator. Which will transient intermediary. That would have been one approach, but then you'd have to go through the text and remove every instance of transient lodging intermediary. Page 5. Section 33.08. Sub A, sub 3. Reads, on a quarterly basis, on the 15th day of the month following the closed of the quarter. And the word closed should be close. And page 7, which is section 33.10, sub B. There's some language in the current code that was omitted as the code was transcribed over. So the next to last sentence currently reads in the draft, such determine and notice within 3 years after discovery by the city recorder / manager. And between the words notice and within, the phrase shall be made and mailed. needs to be inserted because it was accidentally omitted from the original code.
Shall be noted and mailed.
Shall be made and mailed. So then it would read, notice shall be made and mailed within 3 years.
Yep.
Also on page 7, section 33.10, sub C. Cost of determining tax. Reads all costs to the city in determining the actual facts due from any operator. The word fact should be tax. I think that's it.
Well,
I just have a quick question for Rick. So Airbnbs are paying CLP you at the moment, or you,
Some of them are paying based upon our definition. That does include the word motel or RV park. But the actual term is not within our current definition.
So the term Airbnb gets used interchangeably for several different things and probably inappropriately. So when someone says Airbnb, they usually mean a short-term rental, not the company Airbnb. So there are many short-term rental operators in Lakeside that are remitting transient occupancy tax either directly or through one of these intermediaries. But the company Airbnb, at least when I was on staff, was not submitting transient occupancy tax.
yeah,
And in my reading of the state requirement, it does require that Airbnb, short-term rental transient operators or transient lodge intermediaries collect and pay that. So it wouldn't, if you have a home that is signed up with one of those services, Airbnb should be collecting that and Airbnb should be getting a check to the city. And I do not believe, when I asked the city manager if we were getting checks from them, the answer was no. So I believe that it's possible that Airbnb has been collecting these funds and we're not getting them. And if it's within 3 years, we should be able to go back and collect that. I had one more question, if I may. Section 3307, registration of the operator under A. It seems to require that the intermediaries get a city business license. Do we actually expect companies like VRBO and Airbnb to somehow pay us $70 for a business license? And in that logic, would they be responsible for doing that, or are we going to ask them for that? It seems they operate in thousands of cities. It would be.
I believe our code specifies if someone's renting more than 3 units, they have to have a business license, or 3 or more. I'm not sure which. I have to look. But if they have 3 or more, I would expect them to be held to the same standard as someone who's not a corporation called Airbnb.
Sure, makes sense to me. I would love to have them pay the business fee. I just wonder if we're gonna start knocking on the door for the $70, because I really doubt they're gonna show up here and say, here's $70. We just have to ask for it. Okay.
anything else? And Mr. City Manager, those changes can all be made after we approve them. Okay. All right, all in favor? Opposed? That passes. We have a public hearing on our Lakeside City budget. And that will be to our city manager.
Chairman Pointer and council, this was enjoyable but interesting budget season that we are wrapping up here. Our Oregon public budget law requires public hearings, both held at the budget committee level as well as the city council level. In particular, you are obligated to listen to any comments as it relates to the expenditure of funds from state revenue sharing funds. We actually have to document the fact that we had a public hearing and allowed people to speak relating to the expenditure of state revenue sharing funds that we receive from the state. But again, the Oregon public budgeting process is probably the most inclusive process of local government where the requirement for public involvement, other than perhaps land use, it's the exercise of self-governance that not only promotes but requires a high degree of community and public involvement. You have before you a proposed, approved, recommended budget. The budget document includes what the budget officer proposed. It includes what the budget committee approved on a 12-0 vote. And then you have some minor edits that are the yellow highlighted boxes in the document as it relates to additional financial information that we have gained since the crafting of this document started in late February. So I would recommend that you conduct your public hearing, listen to the community as it relates to their issues and concerns, review this document, and make a determination. We are required to have a budget adopted by the last day of June in order to open our doors July 1st, because this document adoption is what authorizes the expenditure of resources that you have been entrusted to through your fiduciary responsibility as members of this council. My edit changes are just based upon recent financial information as we get more monthly reports of revenue and expenditures in and tracking of funds. The budget committee made very few changes to the proposed budget, mostly having to do with the transit lodging tax. But I'm happy to answer questions about it, but it's probably an opportunity for you to listen to the public as they provide their input to this operational budget plan for the next fiscal year. There are plenty of copies of the budget with the green covers on the back table, and I'd be happy to answer questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. Does anyone in the audience have comments? Budget process or budget?
I'm Linda Sherrick. I was actually the chair of the budget. So, and there's 12 of us that came. We were able to go through the whole budget in just a little over an hour. And that was basically because of what Rick did and presented with us. He simplified things quite a bit. And it was, I would say, very delightful process. And I see some nodding heads, go through some of the budget. So, and he was actually very encouraging in regards to the funds that we do have available. So, I just want, that's my 2 cents. And I just want to thank Rick for the process that we've gone through. It was, you know, normally it takes us 2 meetings. We did it in 1, and that was with his budget, you know, statement. So that's good.
Is there anyone on?
Oh, let me look. Oh, hang on. Oh, it was just a comment about great job, Rick. Sorry.
Yeah, who put that in there?
Didn't have the same name as me. I have some recommended language for a motion. Since we don't have a tax base, our motions to approve the budget is a little bit different than most cities. So I did confer with Oregon Department of Revenue. An appropriate motion would be, I move to approve Resolution 2024-07, adopting the budget and making appropriations for the 24-25 fiscal year for the city of Lakeside.
Let me repeat that one. Sorry.
I move to approve Resolution 2024-07, adopting the budget and making appropriations for the 2024-25 fiscal year for the city of Lakeside.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 2024-07, adopting the budget. It's too much pressure. Adopting the budget and making appropriations for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. I missed something.
For the city of Lakeside.
City of Lakeside.
I'll second.
Well, Councilor Wood made the motion, and I guess Amir drops the second. All right, any discussion from the council?
I'd like to point out something. If anyone noticed, I'm very proud of the budget committee and the council and Rick for going from $500 in code enforcement last year to $22,000 in code enforcement. So not only now do we have an ordinance to do something, now we have money to do something too. So I'm like really excited about that.
I had one question, I suppose it is for Rick, on the tourism budget 5, under resources. I noticed that 2 lines, line 1 and line 5 had small adjustments. Line 1 makes sense to me. Line 5, I saw just a small reduction, and I hope you could help me understand that reduction.
The amount that is projected to be carried over to next year is 5,000 less than what we thought it would be, because this was written prior to the council's action of 10 grand. And so there's going to be about 5,000 less to start the year than was projected. So then I had to balance the fund by removing 5 grand from elements of expenditure, because I have to present a balanced budget. Is that a fair enough response?
Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That happens. 2407 drops the budget. Now we have resolution 2408, which is the election to receive a state revenue share. The city manager can explain that to us.
Chair, the state law also requires recognition and documentation that we held public hearings and that we want to receive state revenue sharing. And in order to document those two facts, we are required to provide a resolution to the Oregon Department of Revenue and a copy to the county clerk's office as it relates to the fact that the city of Lakeside held the public hearings and wishes to receive things like the gas tax, marijuana tax, alcohol tax, cigarette tax, and other state revenue sharing funds that make up about a third of our general fund revenue. So this is a document that the governing body is stating that we held the public hearings and that we wish to receive the funding from the state.
So I'm going to make the motion that we approve resolution 2408 and the election to receive state revenue sharing.
Second.
Councilor Pointer made the motion and Councilor Wood seconded it. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That happens. Now we have resolution 24-09, creation of a community code enforcement committee. And take it away, city manager.
Mr. Chair and Council, this is to formalize the consensus previously reached by the City Council as it relates to community involvement in our code enforcement prioritization for our organization. This is here because we want to be a little bit more formal, a little bit more organized, and a little bit more community engaged when it comes to the establishment and implementation of code enforcement within our community. And so the mayor has appointed members to serve on this community, and the council is in a position to ratify those nominations. And this resolution creates the committee and ratifies the founding members of the committee.
I'll make a motion to accept resolution 24-09. A resolution creating the Community Code Enforcement Committee, setting forth purpose and plan and appointing founding members.
Motion made by Councilor Miller and seconded by Councilor Wood. Any discussion? None? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Resolution 2409 is adopted. Now we have resolution 24-10, setting fees for the 24-25 system.
Mr. Chair, as the Budget Committee heard, the most significant fee change is that of our wastewater. We have a history of increasing that 10% an average of 10% the last 5 years. And while we have seen both inflation as well as our modification of how we count equivalent dwelling units take a toll on that increase that was recommended from a compensation rate study that was done by Donovan Enterprises out of Portland. We still have expenses now and in the future as it relates to the capital cost of our wastewater treatment plant. I recommended 5% increase in wastewater to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee adopted the budget, approved the budget with that 5%. Other than that, the rest of these rates are intended to be very similar to last year's rates It's 5% for the standard wastewater, and it's a 10% increase for step and stag systems. The city is expending far more funding on the systems that are step and stag, which means they have tanks that need to be cleaned out, and lining and piping and other issues. So the rate increase for wastewater is 5% for standard customers, 10% for step and stag. The actual rate page, which is the last page of this section, that has yeah, okay. Thanks. Maybe I'll put it on the backside. So other rates are based, the other sewer rates are based upon these two improvements. Now, we do have one rate that I would like to discuss with the council about, which we haven't talked about, and that's the airport. And I have public testimony regarding airport as it relates to fees. Back in 2022, we doubled the rental rate for hangars. Not exactly sure why, but playing Monday morning quarterback is never something a city manager likes to do. Based upon the studies that I've provided you a copy of in the packet, based upon what we have in the way of an airport, without fuel, without facilities, in some places without fencing, and based upon what you look at in the rates for other airports of our similar level, state airport rates, typically it's 10 per footage. We were charging 12 and now we're charging 25. So I have comments from the airport commission members to share with council in this regard, and would suggest that while it's not stated on the draft document before you, you may wish to reconsider the doubling of rates that was done in 2022. There's a little bit of a twist to this one, and that is the fact that I can't find documentation that you adopted the rates in 2022. In fact, the minutes from the meeting state that no action was taken. However, I do have a signed resolution with the increased rates. But that's neither here nor there. I'm looking at what I think is an appropriate and fair balance to our very small group of airport renters of 4 hangars currently, and would suggest that you might want to consider changing that rate for the rental of the hangars back to 12.5. Other than that, the intent of the rate structure is to parallel where we're at now and not make any significant changes across the board. This particular attachment B was done by our engineers based upon the fact that they did the original rate schedule for this based upon past work they'd done for us. But no, the intent here is that what you see, there's an attachment A. I can see where that got confusing. There's an attachment A that is from the previous year's budget that increased it to 75 as it relates to the liquor license. So if you look at attachment A, that in the right-hand column says 22, 23, that's an increase. if you look at the attachment A that says current fee 75, proposed fee 75, that is correct. So I apologize for any confusion that may have led to. But no, the intent is not to change any fees other than base rate, sewer, stag and step. And I am suggesting that you change the airport rental fee back to 12.5. I have testimony to read if you would like to hear it. For airport? No, there's no mention of it in the minutes.
Cost of running the airport was way ahead of what the hangar. That's why I went. All the things you mentioned, flight other airports, but I don't know whether you flight ours or not. I don't know whether that was correct, but that's why it was done.
I appreciate that we have done some comparisons with other airports, and it seems on the surface that our rates are twice or more what others are paying. But do any of those comparisons live in the economic reality that we do, that we don't have other funding sources?
I'm sure that some do and some don't because some of them are not in cities. But that goes back to the root question. Do we set our rates based upon the fees and the costs to operate? Or do we base our rates based upon the fact that we need money worse than other people do because we don't have a tax base?
I feel like we have to base our decision on what we're putting out, not based on what is going on in any other city.
May I read the comments from the airport commission, Mr. Chair? This is from Gary Henricks. I am not a resident of Lakeside, but I have an airplane based at the Lakeside Municipal Airport, Hangar 6. I have been a member of the Airport Commission for about 9 years. The mission statement of the commission talked about making this airport a popular place for pilots to fly into, and also to build hangars and base their aircraft here. One of the inducements for pilots to build a hangar here was the low cost of hangar space lease. In June of 2022, the City Council apparently adopted a resolution to raise the lease rates from 12 cents to 25 cents per square foot in one fell swoop. Lakeside Municipal Airport is, according to Oregon Department of Aviation, listed as a Class 5 airport. I have gone through the Oregon Department of Aviation statewide rates and changes survey, and I cannot find any instance where a Class 5 airport is charging more than 15 cents per square foot for hangar space lease. There is language in the original lease document that I have stating City of Lakeside reserves the right to review all city fees to include hangar lease every 2 years per city ordinance. Adjusting hangar rent would be considered at this time, but be fair and equitable, consulting with the Oregon Department of Aviation on hangar lease state rates statewide. I find hard to believe that doubling the lease rate after consulting with ODA could be called fair and equitable. For example, Bandon State Airport, which is classified as a Class 3 airport and has a paved runway and taxi lights, taxiway, lights, fuel service, and mechanical services, charges 23.45 cents per square foot, whereas Lakeside offers no more than uneven grass strip and a windsock. I understand that Lakeside is financially challenged because it has no tax base, but is it fair to try to gain additional financing from the hangar owners? Surely the fact that the sewer plant is able to get rid of its excess effluent has much value. Why can't that be considered in relation to what the city wants to charge for hangar lease rates? Rick, I wanted to attend the city council meeting on the 13th to present my arguments, but I'm unable to because of previous plans. But I would like for you to read this to the council and make copies of it for them, if you will. Thank you in advance, Gary Hendricks.
One thing to remember is the airports that have those other services make money from those other services. And I don't know whether you can draw a conclusion from that or not. So what?
I don't think it's solely fair to charge double what we were charging before, just because we don't have a property tax. I think there's a meet in the middle road, maybe somewhere. Because, but how many people are renting hangars?
We have 4 hangars.
I've heard, yeah, here's four talk.
Well, some hangars are on our property, some hangars are on private property, and they have what's called chain access. In other words, the buildings are across the fence.
There's at
But-
least 7 on our side of it.
And some of them are big. and some of them aren't.
Only 5 on the airport.
I'm just saying, there's 7 roofs when I look at an aerial photo.
That one.
You know it.
There's also been discussion when we discussed the cost of mowing last year. I believe it was Counselor Wood who asked the question. I was in the audience at the time, but I believe the question was asked, could we reduce the cost of mowing by doing it half as often or something like that? And Goodrick from the wastewater treatment plant was sitting in the audience, and he responded to that question. And he responded that we have to cut it so often to maintain appropriate aviation resources, or make it appropriate for the airplanes. So in that, it sounds as if we're spending some amount more than required for the wastewater just to maintain it for good airport operation. So we're investing from that angle as well.
There are requirements from the DEQ about how often that grass is cut and how high it can be and what you do with the waste grass. So there's other things.
I understand, it's some number, I don't know what it
What
is.
to do with the airplanes. This time.
That was just a response from the director at that time.
Anything else? Are we taking public comment?
I thought it was at least one hand out
Yeah, I saw some
there.
hands up. Yeah, certainly.
I'm willing to listen.
Okay, who's first? I'll go first. Okay.
Name is Jim Hill. I am on the airport committee as well. I have a hangar at the airport and I have a home in town here. And I do have a piece of property over on the west side of the airport as well, which I maybe plan on unless there's some of these getting really disgusted. I mean, not disgusted. Because of the rate increase. And then also we were never told, all of us pilots that have hangars, we were never told that there was a rate increase either. I went to a meeting here last year and voiced the same opinion. And I just think it's excessive. I know you guys I know we don't have a lot of money in this town, but airports, man, I have a hangar in Medford at the Medford Airport. Airports bring in revenue. It brings into this town revenue, whether you guys realize it or not. There's people that come here, that fly in here to come to town just to eat breakfast or dinner. And they're just, with the cost that you guys have established for 25 cents, I don't think we're gonna get any more people to build hangars here, which, if you split that up there, I've got guys, I'm in a flying club too in Medford at the airport. There's guys right now that are just bugging me. Hey, can I build a hangar there? And I was like, I don't know if I'd want to, because 25 cents, that's more than what you pay at the Medford. It's an international airport. So
I mean, we need to really look at this rate. I mean, last year I was willing to say, hey, let's just bump it to 15 cents. It's still more than what the average airport of its size and the amenities that it has. But I think, with Lakeside being a place where you can come here and get in your Razor and go to the dunes. I mean, there's a lot of pilots that can build hangars and buy homes so they can do that. And then also too, through the fence, that's the highest I've seen at any private, public airport through the fence, going from 200 to 500. I think it's ridiculous. That's something that needs to be looked at too. And I don't mind if that gets raised a little bit, it's like, if they raised our sewer rates or water rates and doubled them, over double, I think Cameron's just had enough.
Questions, how much do you pay a year? for your senior here in Lakeside?
Well, right now, the last couple of years, a lot of us, there's no bills ever sent to us. I pay 12 cents a square foot. And it's not just the hangar, you have like X amount of square footage on the outside as well. So it's like I have like a 30 by 40 hangar. Well, I think it's like $150 some dollars. It's probably
For everyone.
and then there's different size hangars out there.
I need to point out that we're talking about the grounds for just the ground. They build it and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, if this continues at this rate, I'll probably sell my hangar, sell my house, sell my property, and go somewhere else.
What do you think is a fair number?
I think at the maximum 15 cents is more than fair. I know some of the guys that on the committee say, oh, no, that's too much. Well, I understand, a tax base for the city would be great, but we all pay taxes here. It goes to the counties. I don't know where that money comes. We don't get very much of it back. They need to, I would be in favor of a city tax if they would reduce our county tax. Once they start tax, it never goes away. So anyhow, I know a couple of pilots and hangar owners that voice the city as well.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
What else do we have? Any comments or
My name's Steve Colbert. I own one of the hangars here at the Lakeside Airport also. And I second what Jim said. I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that the cost of owning those hangars and the cost of the ground lease will increase occasionally. But when the previous city council made the decision to double that rate, more than double the rate, it was excessive. And based on, again, the amenities that are offered at this airport, that's one of the things that brings people, especially, pilots to it. And like Jim said, pilots that would want to build there, potentially use that airport, is the fact that it's not excessively expensive. And at 25 cents a square foot for the ground lease, that's going to put it at the top of the list for airports that are especially municipality owned airports in the state of Oregon. So, I do think that, yes, all the pilots and the folks that own hangars there and use that airport, they would assume that occasionally there's going to be rate increases. But the rate was doubled with no real input from the folks that actually utilize the airport.
I have a thought and I'll pose it to you. I feel like I would be willing to support what you guys are asking for at 15 cents with a request. I've been coming to these city council meetings for a few years now, and I think this is the second time I've ever had representatives from the airport committee show up to these meetings. I think that we would be more supportive of you guys and in this request that you're making. If you guys can make a commitment to show up at more of these meetings and explain to us what's going on at the airport, how that is potentially benefiting the community. We mentioned people flying in and that's supporting the economy. If we were made to understand those things and maybe you guys put some numbers and some realities on that, that would make it easier for us to understand.
Absolutely. And I'm as a relatively new hangar owner there, I think that's one of my goals is that there is some representation from the airport that shows up here and is served.
It's on the agenda for every single city council
Good,
meeting.
and I'm gonna do my best to be here. And, one of the things you mentioned is how does the airport benefit the community? I believe it's this weekend, it's on Saturday that ODART is. So Saturday, ODART, which is an organization in the state of Oregon that does disaster response. They will be using that airport as well as the lake to, it's a simulation for, emergency response in case the coast is cut off from resources over in the valley. So they're gonna be landing airplanes in a simulated disaster response at the airport and on the lake. And that's one of the benefits I think that airport does bring to this community. And I don't know if you guys were aware of that, but that is occurring on Saturday. Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh. I couldn't see it on this, sir.
I'm gonna have questions for these wonderful pilots. I'm a little miffed, that's okay. Let it be stated that I love airplanes. I live right on the hill where I watch the planes come and go. Not a lot of planes, they say, but there are some. What I'm curious about is from a financial point of view, and I know you love your planes, and if I had a plane, I'd probably want to do places where I can flex with you. Are you paying by the month? Are you paying this by the year for releasing the property underneath your hangar?
Annual.
So an annual cost, and you do it, what is your annual cost for the rent of the area that we're, the city is charging?
12 cents a square foot is what I've been.
So how much do you pay a year?
My rate, because I probably have the smallest hangar. It's around almost 160.
160 a year,
Yeah, for a little square spot.
$160 a year.
And I can afford.
Okay, that's $160 a year. Sir, how much are you paying a year?
As a new hangar owner, I'm still working through some of the lease stuff with Rick, but it's at least, so if you were to take a 50 by
No, just
50
you,
lot.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's approximately $300 a year at 12.5 cents.
okay, so let's just total for the four guys, $1,200 for the whole year. $1,200 for the whole year. And if we raise this up a little bit, we're gonna get some some air pilots a little upset. So you're going to leave the airport if we raise the price up? Is that what you're gonna do?
Double.
That doesn't matter, even if you doubled it, that's $2,400 a year. Divide that by 12. You can't even find a parking spot to pay that. My ideal is if you don't like the deal, fly out. I'll rent the places for the whole year. I'll rent them. I'll rent the whole place.
Buy the building?
I'll pay, if you don't want it, you're not gonna be there. And then you don't sell the building.
Mr. Chair, this is a public hearing.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, this how this works, is I just think that we're being threatened to the fact that if we don't do this, we're going to sell everything to get out of here. But for $1,200 a year for 5 pilots, maybe even more, I think the amount of value that you're getting is atrocious and simple, as much as they say, by raising the rent. It needs to be adjusted, it needs to be corrected. And I think that if we allow it to happen, it's going to open up doors for other things that's going to come in. So I just don't like being threatened by the fact that that's what can happen. If we don't do this, we don't do that. Okay, I think the city is paying more and being a tremendous, that if I knew about this earlier, I probably would have built a building and got trained how cheap it is to put it up here. So obviously the pilots aren't gonna like me very much, but I do like airplanes. And I hope that they could come to a more logical decision and a more logical explanation of why they build it at having this cheap of property renting. I think they're not doing service for the city of Lakeside. That's my answer.
And Linda. Oh, Lynn.
Armstrong Lakeside. I just have. I understand what they're saying. This is $168 for a year. And yours shouldn't be 12 and a half if you're a new one. It should be the 15, right? But
No, it should be 24.15, which is what the proposal.
Everyone's should be 25.
but if you already have a contract in effect, they don't change it to your contract. Contract expires. Am I correct?
I don't think so.
Yeah, lease agreement.
Yeah, lease agreement. But the point is, how much does it cost to insure? That's what you guys have got to understand. How much does it cost to insure that airport? And it's costing everybody else. Before you can answer that, how can you make a decision for 5 people reducing it down? It's just something to think about. How much? Do you know, Rick, how much it costs the insurance?
I do not.
So you don't have all the facts to make a decision. You know, okay, you may look at it and say, well, then maybe we should go to 18 or the 25, but you're making a decision where you want to drop it back. That hasn't been raised in how long? How long has it been since the prices have been raised? It says supposed to be every 2 years.
They used to be 9 cents. They got raised here just not too long.
Okay, so if you know when, but I mean, the point is, do your costs. How much is your insurance? 5 citizens, people, and I understand it's, you bring a lot in what you're doing this weekend, but 5 people against all the citizens.
Thank you. Anyone else? What's your opinion?
And I think maybe there's some misconceptions here, and there's not, this isn't the folks that use the airport or pilots against any of the citizens. I think there's been some other discussions about rate increases that have occurred across, based on the city's expenses and so on. None of those have been, 100+ or 200%, right? So again, it's not an expectation that those rates would never change. And the rates based on the leases that currently exist, they can adjust at the council's discretion. It's not that they're fixed for the duration of that lease. They can adjust, I think it was every 2 years, is that correct?
That's
Yep.
Even with the existing leases, is that right?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so again, we're not asking that it remains at the 12.5%. We're just saying that in order to double that, to justify that, where's the justification in that? There's no issues with those rates being raised. I think the previous city council's decision to double that rate with, again, like Rick said, no apparent research there. I do have a sheet here that shows municipality owned airports around the state of Oregon that do offer some better services. The commenter had provided Bannon as one example. That one's owned by the state. There are other airports around the state of Oregon that are owned by cities. And their rate fees are in alignment with that. It's approximately anywhere between 12 and 18 cents a square foot for the lease rate. Yep.
So the council has before you the resolution without the change as it relates to hangar and with the changes as it relates to the wastewater.
I have something to say about the hangar rates. I think the biggest problem probably is collecting the rent and people not paying rent or the appropriate amount. But
The real issue is not having documented contracts findable. My predecessor, person before me, it just wasn't on her radar. And so I have not even found agreements for all the people there. But that's more of a house issue of the city of Lakeside than it is an issue for them.
There is a sign. It's a resolution. That's, we have a copy of that, it's signed, but the minutes from the meeting where it was done say that was going to be put aside and more research was going. And so was it passed or was it not? It doesn't sound like it was. But that's been the history of our paperwork during the side of things like that happen. And somebody, let's just fix it later.
So can we do this? Can we, for now, because there seems to be a lot of questions still, modify this resolution, putting the rate at 15 cents per square foot with the understanding that the airport commission needs to come back and work with the city council over the next year to answer these questions, to figure out these billing issues, to figure out some of the positives that are coming from the city. And they understand in the year that if you can't get some of those answers, that it's gonna start increasing at a regular rate.
I don't think doing a rate reduction based on the fact that they come to council meetings is an appropriate.
It's not based on that, it's just with the ask that let's start having this discussion and have work on facts versus a bunch of questions in there.
Well, I think that's a great idea, but I think there needs to be a more logical process behind it, more of like a cost analysis or.
I agree. What does the city of Lakeside put out compared to what we bring in?
And what's fair and equitable to everyone, the people who rent there, and what's fair to the city.
Sure, that's what I'm saying. We need to have that discussion.
Yeah, I think right back to the first thing that Mayor Kraus said was there a cost analysis done? I think that's probably where we need to go and see what our costs are first off, and then we can go.
Agreed.
I agree.
So, do we wish to modify this so we don't increase the hangar rate at this time and then do a cost analysis and decide what we need to do?
Is it even on the table to increase? It's just to remain the same right now.
Mhm.
It remains the same.
The current resolution remains the same.
We can put it on the agenda for next meeting to,
Uh,
or maybe
It's gonna,
meeting or
it's
two.
gonna take a little while to get some numbers.
All of this was done back, I believe it was in 2019, when we did the leases for the year, for the years, and reset the fees, and we were originally thinking about 40 cents for the square foot, and it was worked down to 12, and so that's what it was set at, and then that 25-cent increase was paused. We didn't think that covered our cost. But anyway. We do need to redo that and revisit it and see just what we do need to do.
Absolutely. That's, we need to figure out exactly, like I said earlier, what comes in and what goes out.
Yeah.
If we're losing money on it, something has to be done.
Yeah, we're too struggling of a community. It's a luxury.
Can I stand up and muddy the waters a little bit? I'm a local pilot. Just,
What I need to say first, what we need to do is have a session with the pilots and with the hangar owners and work this out. Which we did originally, and there were several meetings and lots of back and forth and 12 cents is what we came up with. Anyway, so
okay, I've been flying.
Could you state your name?
In
Excuse me,
the area.
could you state your name for the record, please?
Second, Stan Jeffries.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been flying since 79, actually. Back during my training, I'd come up here and do solo flights, touch and goes. The field there was actually rock on it. There was some gravel underneath the thin grass, and it was easy and good to fly off of. Right now, I still do some flight instruction, probably come in here as much as anybody. There's through the winter right now, it's not safe for a nose wheel airplane. It's soft and wet. And lately with the grass being cut, it's drying out better and it's firmer and it's safer, but I'm considering building a hangar. I have a hangar on the south end. I do maintenance too. I've flown air ambulance for years. I did seaplane rides downtown and up in Puget Sound. But, still interested in the area, but as far as leasing a spot, I don't think there's a deep enough or big enough spot. A couple of my airplanes I wouldn't bring in here because it's soft, and it's short, but besides that point, the pumping of the fluent has not helped things at all. And it, up until it was mowed short last couple of years, it was real marginal. I just gave a flight review for a local pilot in North Bend 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I pulled the power like you usually do, making a simulated, emergency or no power approach. And normally in a 152, you could land, take off, but I go, are you comfortable? He goes, and I really wasn't either in that airplane. And we made where we could have made the airport. He says, no, he goes, and he has a lot up here too. He spends time up here. He goes, no, he goes with both of us and goes, not, I go, okay, that's good. That's real, just do a flyby and go back out and do some. But anyway, the airport, what's that? Oh, okay. Sorry about all this, but my concern is how the airport's gonna be maintained. If it's gonna be, with the tall grass, it's unusable for a lot of airplanes lately, and it's getting smoother right now too. The last couple of months have been coming in here, but I just hope, I'm kind of waiting to see, and if I do get a lot, I would probably try to find something on the west side where I am off of the airport because there's power and water and I'd want a real hangar instead of the hangars right now have no power. Anyway, it's a nice area and I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens. I got a few years, 3 or 4 years before I have to make a decision.
Well, sure, let me go ahead and pass this or try to pass this resolution without the hangar increase and then work on that at a later date.
Right, reasonable.
Too many factors to do things. So,
Okay, there are some other rates in here that should be revisited at some point in the future too. And so, Mr. Manager, how hard is it for the council to revise this rate schedule in a future date?
Very easy. It's a resolution. It's a resolution we have to make public 5 days in advance.
So in addition to the suggestion to put hangar rates to a cost analysis, we need to do the same thing with our application fees to the planning commission. By state law, those are supposed to be limited to an approximation of the city's actual cost in processing those applications. And several years ago, those fees were increased significantly and no cost assessment was done. There was simply a looking out to other cities and saying, how much are they charging? And at some point, if the fees have to cover expenses, obviously, but if they happen to be too high, then often what will happen is people will decide, well, I'm not going to pay the fee and go through the process. I'll just risk doing what I want to do and seek forgiveness later. So just want to suggest you revisit those in the future.
anyone else? So, in favor of passing this with no increase in the airport and the stuff that we're going to revisit some of these things.
That's your motion.
I thought we have a motion. I got a motion on the. I got a motion from Counselor Hand and a second from Counselor Wood.
Aye.
Opposed? Code enforcement implementation plan.
Mr. Chair, this is on. Mr. Chair, this is on the agenda at council's direction that on every council agenda of every regular council meeting, that this item be listed until the city has reached a point of at least a successful plan in place to address code enforcement in our community. Beyond the resolution, creating the committee and appointing the committee, which you did earlier, I've also been staying in touch with DEQ about 3 sites that they have interest in. We have seen a significant cleanup between here and McKay's with the transfer of property ownership over in the corner of this block. We have seen some cleanup on the North Lake DEQ site after DEQ find them and provided correspondence related potential additional fines. Also, I've been approached by a land investor who is in conversation with the owner of the Rainbow property, one of our most significant sore spots. The city actually has a $70,000 lien on that property based upon the lack of improvement of that conditions of that property. And this land investor may be coming to the council asking for a arrangement in which if you release the liens in some format and he acquired the property, that there would be some kind of guarantee, warranty about cleaning the property based upon that. So you may see that in your near future. But I'm very optimistic about what you approved tonight in the way of the committee and community involvement with code enforcement. This code enforcement isn't something that's going to come from this dais. This code enforcement is going to have to come from the community, and it needs to be community driven. I have no action items on this.
I would like to touch upon that a little bit. The committee that we created tonight. Now we are good to go with starting rolling out on that and getting things moving with that.
It's my understanding that the meetings will all be public, is that correct? And the public can come and observe and participate at some level or no level, or how would that work? Other than the committee members?
The participation is at the will of the committee, but the committee is an advisory committee to the council, and thus they are required to follow Oregon open public meeting laws. So they're open, but that doesn't mean necessarily that people get to speak. That's up to the decision of the committee.
So I'll get together with the committee members and we'll find a good time for all of us to meet and we will let you know if you guys feel like attending.
Have the committee members been introduced?
No,
Everybody knows, does anybody know who's on the advisory committee? I know I do.
Okay.
We have Lakeside District Board and Committee reports. Watershed.
Had the last meeting of, well, take a break for the summer usually, and so we had a kind of a field trip meeting out on a project site up Benson Creek and on Big Creek, where there's some wetlands restoration projects going on over the summer, so. Just kind of did an overall view of the project site for all the members and whoever else wanted to be. So there'll be work going on all summer on the Benson Creek project.
Water District, that's fine. I did attend their last meeting and they approved their budget and they're wish to receive taxes. Discuss several other maintenance items and they're planning for the July meeting where they're going to introduce the reasons for their proposed rate increase. So that will be interesting. That's probably for that report. 10 Mile Lake Association.
The 10 Mile Lake Association, they had a great cleanup on the lake. I don't know if everybody participated in that or seen what was going on with that. That was a great job done by the volunteers there with the TLA. They have a meeting in, excuse me, the first Wednesday of August because at the last meeting they were proposing for the 3rd. They canceled it because of the holiday. And on the next meeting, which is in August, they're going to go and check on and vote for new members and, excuse me, and any of the residents that want to show up for that meeting are excited to get down and pay attention to what's going on with that TLA.
Fire department had their public hearing for their budget last night and in the meeting, this chief's report, we had 52 total calls for the last month. 56% of them on the north side of the tracks, which is important consideration for the future fire station on the north side of the tracks because of the roads increase in traffic, potential increase. And we redid our positions, which we do every year. And that is about it. We did discuss dredging, the possibility of dredging the canal between the lakes for better access for the part of the road, but that's in the future. So Lakeside business owner.
So the Lakeside business owners are very much in the midst of events planning for the summer with 4th of July events coming up pretty quickly. I think I should say that the business owners decided that vendors at Wolfie Beach for the 4th of July should be limited to local businesses, craftspeople. So I will say out loud that I invite every crafts person, small business person, big business person. That's probably the largest concentration of people on any day of the year in Lakeside. So if you have something that you want to get out to the world, go to the LBO website and get yourself a vending booth and come out there and do things. We would love to have as many local Lakeside folks there as possible.
You have a printed city manager report on the dais. Should highlight a couple of items, including me using the mic. It is election season. I know it seems like we just had one, but it's a fun time. And we do have nomination packets prepared for people considering running for council or mayor. The city of Lakeside has 3 open 4-year seats on the council, 1 open 2-year seat on the council. And then, of course, the mayor's position also is a 2-year term that cycles every election. But anyway, we have packets available. They're on the website too, aren't they? Or the announcement is. I have made an offer to a new employee, um, subject to background and reference checks, one which is done, one which is not. Tentatively set to start on Tuesday, in which we will lose a member of our budget committee, Sean Warren, who will become our new city clerk. Wow, talk about outstanding. Tina and I interviewed 4 candidates. We each rated them, graded them. And while we had a little bit difference in scoring of the 4, we had the same ranking independently. We had the same ranking of the candidates. We're really looking forward to having Ms. Warren on board as our new city clerk, scheduled to start Tuesday morning. Next Wednesday, City Hall is closed. It is a national holiday recognized by our personnel policy. However, the library will be open, very open, doing some significant celebration stuff based upon the national holiday, and encourage the public to come down around noon to participate in activities at the library this coming Wednesday. I think that's all I have to add to my staff report at this time. But I would be happy to answer questions. Can I back up a second? Oh, okay, never mind. In your packet was a form from the state legislature about project funding. If you have any interest or anything that you would like to see us seek legislative funding for, in your packet was a form for you to think about and share with me or send directly to them. Thank you. Sorry.
I would like to thank everybody that showed up tonight, and please put the word out. We can get some more people in here so they can discuss all these great opportunities we have for this city right now. Thank you.
Let's, I think we're taking some steps in the right direction on a lot of things, and just like the participation here and especially up here.
Last week, when Regional Solutions team came out and a representative from Val Foyle's office. We also had ODOT, ODF, Business Oregon, USDA. There was a lot of very important people there. They came, we had lunch at the lodge, which was good. And then we came here and our engineer did a report on our wastewater plant, and Rick did a really nice PowerPoint on the city of Lakeside, the history of the city, where we're going. And then we did a little tour. So we took them to Wolfen Beach, and then we drove to the cemetery and they got to check out our cemeteries. And then we ended at the wastewater treatment plant, and it was really interesting. The representative from Val Foyle's office really liked Lakeside. He's like, I'm gonna be back here on my motorcycle. And he was really all about, everyone seemed really interested in helping Lakeside. So we got a lot of great ideas for funding. So we're working closely now with those people to try to get some things going to help Lakeside. And I do want to formally announce that I intend to run in November.
Two things. I did attend that group of meetings that Nikki was mentioning, and I wanted to say thank you, Nikki, for organizing that. It seemed very helpful. They didn't come with like super solutions for us, but it was clear that these representatives from the national level and the state level do care about Lakeside. They took lots of notes. They asked lots of questions. So hopefully in the future, at least they know we exist when things come up. And I think continuing those sort of things is really good for Lakeside. The other comment is back to our airport discussion. I would like to say to the gentleman who came and spoke about the airport, I'm very interested in speaking with you more, learning more about the airport, because I think we share a goal of trying to get more out of our airport property. And we can really only do that by working together. So please do reach out to me. I'm around town 7 days a week, so we can get together and hopefully learn what we need to do to make the airport better.
I'm gonna comment sadly a little longer than usual, because I'm a little unhappy with us collectively, and not just because I'm a grumpy old man. And to preface this, I want to ask Rick a couple of questions. I'm not trying to make you look bad, it underlines what I want to talk about. On our May 9th meeting, the council unanimously voted to ask the planning commission to revisit the codes for steep slopes and to work on providing a definition of development for steep slopes. And the commission had their regular meeting on June 6th, but it wasn't on their agenda.
That is correct, and that was, while I had a verbal conversation with the chair prior to the meeting, it did not make the agenda, and that was an error on my part.
And also on May 9th, Councilor Hand was discussing the conference he'd attended and that there was the opportunity to get funding for solar power for the sewer treatment plant. And you were going to take that up with the city engineer.
I took it up with the city engineer in writing, and Councilor Hand took it up with the city engineer verbally last week.
Okay, great. That's awesome. With the first issue, not having the agenda item in front of the commission, would it be fair to say that that didn't get the follow-up that it deserved because you had other issues that were more urgent or important?
The what issue?
For the planning commission, the item didn't get on the agenda because you were busy with other things.
That would be a fair statement.
And that's what I don't think we've collectively had enough attention on. This isn't really a reflection on Rick's performance. It's part of an ongoing dysfunction that the city of Lakeside has had procedurally with its government. And it looks, I know we've only been together here for a couple of months and that we have a lot of baggage to deal with in a hurry, but I don't think we're paying attention to it. Lakeside has for many years conducted its business with inadequate staffing, sometimes inadequate in amount, and at all times inadequately trained and experienced. It's unreasonable to expect an overwhelmed and poorly trained staff to effectively and adequately conduct the city's business. From my time as a staff member, I know that Lakeside property owners and businesses have suffered significant financial damages arising from errors or incompetence on the part of city staff and elected and appointed officials. Our current council and many of Lakeside citizens are either ignoring this issue or seem to be happy with things the way they are. When we were considering hiring a new city clerk, which I'm really happy we have done on a full-time basis, some councilors recommended that we consider having it as a part-time position. And when you look at the job description, it's doubtful that the work there could be done properly by 2 people, much less half a person. When considering the need to hire a new city administrator, some councilors and residents who spoke on the issue were in favor of hiring a person without the adequate range of training or experience if that could be done for wages that were less expensive. There wasn't really much consideration of the costs that arise when the city administrator fails to perform adequately, not talking about you, Rick, even though we've experienced that repeatedly here in Lakeside. It doesn't matter what the council discusses, votes on, or decides if the staff are not going to be able to support the resulting directives, and if the council fails to make adequate efforts to ensure that there is meaningful follow-up on its directives. It doesn't matter how good the ordinance we pass are, if there's no ability for staff to follow up on that. And there can't be follow-up unless there's an adequate staffing level. So tonight, the council adopted revised code that provides due process for those accused of code violations, something that's a legally required missing piece of the code enforcement process here in Lakeside. Tonight, we didn't consider what staff report is required to follow the enforcement process, whether that staffing is available, and if not, what steps would be required to provide it. We also didn't consider taking out those questions in the future. In the years that I've lived in Lakeside, I haven't seen any prior council discuss this type of issue. I'm not saying they haven't because I didn't attend every single meeting. I'm just saying I've never seen it. I haven't seen councils do follow-up on their policies and proclamations. Unless and until the problem of staffing resources is addressed by the council and supported by the citizens of Lakeside, we will continue to see residents and businesses knowingly violate local codes at their convenience, willful failures to comply with building and electrical codes, and ongoing theft of sewer services, which you may not know is pretty rampant. I have met intelligent, civic-minded, and professionally experienced Lakeside residents who would be happy to volunteer to serve the community by serving Lakeside city government in some capacity. Some have already done so, but most will not now because they have perceived Lakeside city government as dysfunctional. Rational people will not sacrifice their time and life energy to an endeavor that appears to them to have no reasonable prospect resulting in a positive difference. When capable and civic-minded citizens opt out of service to a disorganized and dysfunctional city government, positions tend to be filled by those who are motivated by self-aggrandizement or self-interest, and who will in general not give those positions the time and energy they require. This in turn reinforces the ongoing cycle of civic dysfunction. So if this council is serious about improving the city of Lakeside and properly serving the needs of its citizens and business community, we need to get serious about providing staff resources that can actually do the work. And I don't mean to be negative Nelly here, but that's how I see it.
I think we all understand up here, the amount, at least I know a lot of people do in the audience, how much work Rick does. And I know that there's sometimes things that I want to fix with the city. That's just like, you can't. It's really overwhelming being a city councilor and seeing all the problems that Lakeside has. But you can't possibly fix them all with one guy. But I just don't know what council could do, and I would like to know what the council could do legally as well, because I know there's limitations on what council can and cannot do to assist in getting more staffing, because I think it's just budget, right? Mostly.
Well, it's partly budget and partly support from the citizens. Council can't do anything without the community. But for example, it's just a coincidence that the difference between what we're considering as a rate for a city administrator and what appears to be the market rate, the difference between those two figures is roughly what we're spending on that 8th Street property. Problems like that are hamstringing us. But whether we can't print money, but we have to get creative in some way.
I can agree. I have felt that our city hall needed more staffing for the last couple of years, where we had either fully or partially funded positions that weren't filled, and now we're starting to fill those positions. But I can certainly see room for at least another person in the office if we could ever find the funding.
But we weren't gonna talk. Well, gee, how do I follow that? It's always been money, it's always been, that's been the problem with a lot of these things. Anyway, I'm glad to see everybody here tonight, and I think we covered some important things tonight. And for you airport folks, I'm a pilot, I had an airplane that I based here for many years. So I know a little bit about it. Not your enemy. Anyway, we need to move ahead. I think Rick's taking some important steps and, things he's done, I'm really sorry to see him going, but, that's why. Thank you, everyone. So.
We're going to recess to an executive session. The chair will read the quote from the state. Sorry.
Okay, we're going to go into executive session for ORS 192.6602A. The governing body to hold an executive session to consider employment of a public officer. Have to have the audience meeting for that.
I'm gonna have to excuse myself. I don't have a babysitter past 8 o'clock.
Well, you've got us straight.
Can't bring my kids to executive session. Sorry, guys. Yeah, thank you.
Bring some starter, but I forgot to bring it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we'll be in touch. Okay, we'll be in touch and I'll come grab it. Thank you.
Okay, I gotta knock some people off here.
Yeah, so do I. I'm just gonna do that.
I got some good. I never do it like I said. Once, this is,